Let's unbox the Black Series 6-inch scale figure of the child. Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it. Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. As long-time fans and collectors of the Star Wars 3.75-inch action figure line, it actually wasn't until the launch of the Mandalorian live-action series on Disney Plus where we fully dove into collecting the 6-inch Black Series line of Star Wars figures. And at the time, we were keeping most of our Black Series figures in their boxes. Fast forward to now, when I'm opening up most of our figures, so I've decided to go back and open up some of those really early ones because I really do want to get them out of their boxes. And of course you can see I have my very first Grogu Black Series 6-inch figure here, the child as he was still known at the time. He's been in this tiny cute little box all this time. I definitely want to get him out and add it to my display. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. Let's just take a quick look at the packaging and then let's open him up. The first Black Series 6-inch scale version of the child, or as we now call him, Grogu, was released in early 2020, and at the time Hasbro's Black Series packaging style was that very nostalgic black boxes with the side red panels there. For some reason, Hasbro decided to release the child separately from the Mandalorian, and the boxes don't really match, so I'm not really sure what the thinking was behind this very tiny packaging, but at least it came with a much smaller price tag. Nowadays, Grogu is available packaged alongside the Mandalorian, or on the occasion where he is sold separately, he comes with a lot of accessories, including his iconic hover pram in its various different forms. So taking a closer look at the figure, it's very space efficient with this packaging here. We've got the iconic Black Series logo here at the top. We also have the Mandalorian series logo here, something that is not usually used across a Black Series packaging. We usually just have the character name, which is written here off to the right, the child. It's kind of funny, the window is so small, the prominent recycle note there is right on the front of the box because there isn't space to hide it anywhere else. The rest of the box is pretty crammed full of just copyright text because there's not much space to put it. We have that side panel there, no number on this one, reads simply as the child, and the rest of it is literally barcode and copyright text on just about every surface, with the exception of that left panel where we have that wraparound a little bit there of the window, and again the character name there. So pretty minimal packaging. I do like the fact that, as we can see, his very small accessories do come with a nice clear little plastic capsule to store them in. That is not something that every version of Grogu comes with. You're sort of left to your own devices to store all of those small accessories by themselves, but I do really like that for this very original version we have this little plastic case to keep his 3 accessories in. So let's go ahead and open him up. So now I have tiny Grogu and his little box of accessories out of the box so we can take a closer look. And of course I'm going to start off with Grogu. It's kind of funny to think that I own quite a few versions of Grogu in the Black Series 6-inch scale line, but until yesterday I hadn't actually opened any of them up out of their boxes. So this is kind of fun. I've been looking at them through their plastic packaging all of this time, but now I'm finally seeing some details that are a little bit harder to see when they're in their box. The first thing that really struck out to me is, of course, he has little articulated feet on the underside. I hadn't really noticed this very well in the box. They are articulated. They're attached with sort of little ball-shaped attachment points there, so you can rock his little feet for a subtle amount of movement, but that may help get a little bit of stability. Interesting to note that when he has these feet visible, just kind of keeps his little jacket off the ground, which I feel gives it a level of sort of realism there, because he is kind of puppeted on the show. Of course, you do tend to see his feet from time to time. I just like the fact that when he's on display, I can just see those little toes underneath his jacket there. I quite like that. So taking a closer look at the paintwork on the face, of course, this is older, quite a few years by now, but it does have some really nice paintwork on it. We've got a really nice sort of little faint white hairs painted on the top of his head, not too contrasting with the green tone of his skin there. We have sort of a bit of a pinky tone in his iconic ears there, and he has black eyes. Now, Grogu's eyes in action figure form have varied a little bit over the years. Some of them are fully black. Personally, that's my favorite. Some of them have been a bit of a sort of a googly-eyed effect where there is whites in the corners. This one, it's kind of in the middle. It's not sort of googly-eyed, but there is a color in the corners. It's a little bit more sort of like the skin tone, leaning more towards brown, I think. I do prefer it when the full eye is black. It just feels a little bit more true to Grogu in his appearance on The Mandalorian. But the paintwork on this is tidy. You know, when there's not much detail, the eyes and all of those tiny details have to be painted well, and everything looks as it should here. So his head is articulated. Again, we're just working with that sort of round ball style attachment there, so he can turn his head around. His ears are fairly sort of flat there. They're not sort of posed in a particular sort of expression, as it were. So they do hit a little bit on the large collar of his jacket there, but we can still turn his head around and we get a little bit of up and down movement there as well. If you tip his head back, you can kind of see the rings there of his collar, which is quite nice, and you can almost sort of make out the inner sort of edge there of his jacket underneath the sort of big collar here. Moving down, we've got a really nice sculpting here for his jacket. Some really nice fine detail lines, seams, all of that kind of stuff. It's almost got sort of quite a hard edge around the bottom here, which is kind of interesting. It's not sort of soft. Sometimes on screen, it almost looks like the hem of his little jacket kind of curls under. I guess they're trying to sort of hide the puppeteering sort of mechanisms on the underside. This one has quite a hard edge to it, so it does look like the bottom hem rather than it sort of tucking underneath as it might do in some episodes on the show. He does have articulated sleeves. Oh, and that one just completely came off. Very easy to pop them out. That one sort of gave me a fright. Yes, he can articulate with those balls, but they're very easy to take off. That one just came straight out as well. Interesting. When I was playing with the one that I opened up yesterday, I could swing his arms around no problem. I guess because the attachment points are very small. Of course, I don't mind being able to sort of swap accessories out. Sometimes you have to swap a lot of heads around on Black Series ones to swap with helmets, sometimes different hands. I wasn't quite expecting that one to pop off quite as easily, I've got to be honest. But yeah, so I can swivel his hand quite freely, and it's not going to sort of hit at his ears there or along the bottom there. Of course, we can also sort of swivel it out, but interesting. I wasn't expecting those to sort of come out so easily, but there they pop back in because it's just that very simple attachment there. Now, of course, if I sort of hold on to everything really carefully, you can actually swivel his little hands there around as well. Not that that's really going to give us too much posability because he's not really going to be holding any accessories. Generally, a lot of that hand articulation really helps for the humanoid characters for holding blasters and accessories. We do get a fair bit of expression with Grogu with his hands, of course, so I do like that we can rotate it, but I don't think that's really going to help us when it comes to the accessories. But overall, a very cute figure. We've got nice painting details here on his little jacket. I have to say the collar on this particular one is a little bit more contrasting. On some versions of the figure, the collar and the little cuffs around the jacket are painted the same color, whereas on this one, I think the cuffs are painted. There is a sort of an element that kind of looks like it's painted, but it's a very, very close color match to the actual jacket. It doesn't look like it matches this collar. It's definitely paler for the collar. You can see sometimes you can just kind of catch that sort of gloss of a painted finish, but the contrast is not very strong compared to the collar here. I think the collar is painted on this one. To be honest, I think it's actually a separate plastic piece. It's very, very tight. Sometimes you get that really obvious kind of seam line when something is... I think this is actually a separate piece. Interesting, because on the one that I opened up the other day, this was painted, and I had just kind of assumed this one was going to be the same, but yeah, I think that's a separate plastic piece. So that explains why that's not very contrasting. Okay, so they've painted this slightly lighter, but it doesn't match that paint color there. So don't know if that's sort of like a big criticism of it there. Generally, I think of this collar section matching with those sleeve cuffs there. So kind of interesting. They've definitely refined their method to crafting Grogu in action figure form over the years. But yeah, he stands up pretty easily. I don't think the feet are going to really add too much in terms of sort of adding any sort of angles or poses or anything like that. Though of course it's going to help to just get him standing just a little bit straighter, just so he looks cute there. Okay, so very good. Let's move on to his little box of accessories. So this is quite unique. Sometimes we get very small accessories from Hasbro and it's just up to you to figure out how to store them or display them. This one is a nice little clear plastic box that comes with a removable lid, just lifts off there, and inside we have 3 accessories. So these are really small, but I'll get them out. Of course, I want to see how they look. So we have his tiny little silver sort of gear shift knob. Of course, this is very important in the show. It's quite a sentimental item for Grogu, but to be honest, I don't know. Let's test out to see if this figure can actually hold it. The one that I opened up yesterday could hold it. I'm a little bit unsure about this one, and I really don't want to drop it because I feel like this thing is going to get lost. There we go. Okay, so he can just hold it. That's really, really sort of just a balance there. Can't really speak too much about, you know, the accuracy or anything. It's so tiny. I feel like this would get lost. I mentioned in my unboxing of the other version, I kind of wish it was like a magnet, like some of the magnetic / metal hilts that we had on some of the Jedi action figures in sort of the prequel era. I thought that was sort of really fun. It's just so he could sort of hold it or have like a little bit of a force thing, but his hands are so small. I understand probably that's just too logistically hard to go and embed a magnet in his very small hands. The other options we have here are his little soup cup here. Little brown bowl, just plain brown plastic. Because he can't put his hands together, he has no articulated elbows here, he can't grasp it in a two-handed manner, and his hands can't really hold it either. You might be able to get some sort of interesting balance, but it's really hard. The best I can do is just kind of putting it on the ground in front of him. That's about as much sort of posability as I'm going to get on that one. If you're game to use blue tack or glue even, that would be a useful accessory. But the other one that I think is probably the most useful out of the 3 is the little green frog here. Of course, he's not really going to be holding this one either, but it does at least stand on its own. And it does actually have some nice painting details. We've got that singular little black eye, a dark green area down the back of the body, and yeah, it's just a cute little sculpted green toy frog. Perhaps they could have given us a few of these. I see just like, you know, little collection of green frogs there, but we have just the one with this particular version of the figure. So those are the 3 accessories that came with this. Now it's interesting that Hasbro actually included these 3 accessories with the recent reissued version. That version originally came out in 2022 and was reissued in the archive line. Included these same 3 accessories but without this clear plastic box. The original version had this box, but when they reissued it in the archive line, we do not have that little clear box. I guess Hasbro decided to just take that bit out of the equation there. I do think that is really useful because I just don't like losing my Star Wars accessories. So I do have on hand the Grogu from that 2022 figure where he was packaged originally by himself with a hoverpram and a few accessories. You can see that this one, he was sculpted in a sitting position and he came with a few accessories like his mythosaur sort of necklace as I have him here. Now this version, this one I really, really like because as I was mentioning earlier about the eyes, this version has the sort of, for me, it feels more correct to be fully black there. And you can see that because this one, it's a little bit hard to tell that it's not fully black, but when you look at them up close, you can see the color in the corners of the eyes. And something about this one just reads more like Grogu having those larger black eyes compared to this one here. This one, you can see the paintwork on that collar. Now that I can see them together, I can clearly see the differences. That one is painted, this one is a sculpted plastic piece. This one also had a softer appearance on his tunic here compared to this one that's got very hard edges to the sculpting, and of course because he's sitting down he doesn't have sculpted feet. So it's been really fun to actually finally open these 2 and actually see the details. It's interesting to see the hair difference as well. This one has hair printing all over the top of his head extending onto his ears. This one is a lot fainter and not quite onto the ears, just mostly on his head there. But yeah, Really, really fun. Something about this one makes him look younger. I think it's the bigger eyes and perhaps less prominent wrinkles on his forehead. This one actually looks more like an older Grogu, despite the fact that he was the first one made. So technically this would be the youngest version of Grogu, I guess. But the wrinkles on his forehead and that sort of slightly more detailed eye work there kind of gives him a slightly older. Of course, his height being taller also makes him look a little bit older anyway, but I really like this one. Also, we have a very different ear I don't know what you call it, angle, but it kind of gives him like a different emotion. He's looking a little bit more curious. This one is a little bit more of sort of a standard sort of pose there with his ears straight out. I like this one just sort of a little bit more curious, I think is the sort of the emotion I'm trying to sort of feel like I'm getting here from this. This one also, he has much more rigid ears on this one. I'm sort of moving his head around while I'm trying to just sort of show the pointiness of his ears. This one, it has a little bit of flex to them as well, slightly different there. But of course, I like having different versions of Grogu. He is such an important character from The Mandalorian. You're going to need him in different poses, different hoverpods, different accessories. But it was just kind of fun to actually jump all the way forward. And my very first version that I unboxed was the most recent version released. And then jumping all the way back and opening up the very first version here. So it's kind of been fun. If I put them in chronological order for me, this one came out in 2020. And this one came out just a few months ago in late 2024. So kind of fun to see the progression there. They're both really cute. I can't wait to add them to my Black Series display of characters from The Mandalorian. So there we go. Really cute. It's kind of funny to think how many versions and how much merchandise there is of Grogu. And back when he first was revealed, there was such a lack of it and we had to wait ages before we finally got him in action figure form. It's kind of funny to look back at that time. Now there's just so much Grogu merch. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars Black Series figure and had a lot of fun checking out the details and doing a little bit of comparison as well. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Black Series fan, I recently opened up the archive carded version of Grogu. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole Black Series unboxing playlist. This is the way.